Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Well, good morning and happy Easter, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility. And if you're a regular listener, you know this podcast is a space for reclaiming your power, for remembering that nothing outside of you, no election, no economic forecast, no cultural chaos has the final say over your joy, your health, your wealth, or your freedom, because it all begins within, every single bit of it. And so this week I'm flying solo. I usually have a guest, but something about this Easter weekend whispered to me to pause, reflect, and speak from the heart. Because Easter, this beautiful, beautiful reflection of what's going on in the world, regardless of your spiritual tradition, because Easter is celebrated by so many of the Judeo-Christian belief systems. It holds a sacred resonance. It's a chance to reflect on renewal, which it's no mistake that it happens in the spring. And I love spring so much because spring really, really, truly does speak of renewal, of newness, of blossoming. And it also speaks to resurrection and the sheer power of starting over. Because the good news is, no matter where you are in your life, no matter how far down you've come, no matter where you are, possibly at a bottom or a high point, you can always start over, start anew. This podcast was born from my own journey of taking radical responsibility for my life. And it has been a journey, I will tell you. I've come through illness, cancer, financial devastation, and the slow but sacred return to alignment. Because today I want to share why I wrote this book called Your Inner Billionaire, but more importantly, speak to some of the principles that are outlined in this book, because it all blends into this idea of radical responsibility. You cannot activate your inner billionaire without having radical responsibility in your own life. Radical responsibility is the only true path to sovereignty. And sovereignty is owning your life. We have given our power away so easily. I often liken it to what I learned in 12-step programs is we are letting so many people live in our heads rent free. And we need to start charging rent if you're going to believe and use the thoughts that are not yours and belong to somebody else. And why is this moment, this Easter moment, is the perfect time for you to rise, for you to be reborn into the newness of a life that is your authentic self. It's so, so, so important for you to begin to understand that all of your beliefs, especially those around money and abundance, come from somebody else. They're other people's ideas and thoughts running around in your head. So what a perfect time, Easter, renewal, rising again, to begin to speak to that very thing. So I want to talk about why I wrote this book in the first place. So I want to start with that question. I get asked that all the time. Why did you write this book? And first of all, why is it called Your Inner Billionaire? Well, the thing is that I wrote this book as a love letter to myself to begin to reflect on where I've come from. I'm going to turn 70 in about 45 days, and I am so flippin' excited about it. And I've been through what I call the gauntlet. I created this book and I wrote it because I've lived it. I've been at the bottom more than once. Trust me, you can't be at much more of a bottom than I've been in my life, financially, emotionally, physically. I was broke on several occasions. I was sick. I was diagnosed with cancer. I was on food stamps. That's the low of the low of the low. I was unsure how to get back to myself. And every time, the only way through wasn't more hustle or more strategy. It was more truth and alignment with myself, more ownership of who I am. So I want to share a little bit about this journey of your inner billionaire, because the fact is, as I said, I wrote it as a love letter to myself. But what I realized is that it is the truth of how we operate on this planet. Ownership of yourself. I there was once a book or a little thing called an owner's manual that was a companion to A Course in Miracles. I can't find it anymore. I can't find it online. Can't find it in my possessions. But I love the idea of an owner's manual so much that we should be given an owner's manual in the delivery room. Here's your owner's manual of how life works. But more importantly, life is about taking radical responsibility for everything that happens in your life. And if you do not do that, then you are playing a victim. And I realized I had spent years giving my power away to systems, to stories, to shame, to other people's ideas, to other people's stories, to other people's voices in my head. And that is the essence of your inner billionaire. And I came up with the title Your Inner Billionaire because the actual title of the book began as Your Inner Millionaire. And when I realized I've made millions and so many other people have become millionaires. It's really easy to become a millionaire these days, frankly, because of inflation. Like really, when I first started years and years and years ago, $250,000 would be what $1 million is today. And that's not really a very challenging goal. So I called it Your Inner Billionaire because I wanted to strike a chord with people. Number one, normalizing being a billionaire, because frankly, being a billionaire apparently is shameful in some sectors of our society right now. But the fact is that to strive to the idea that you are a billionaire within. Now, if it shows up in monetary in your bank account, that's great. And also just understanding that you can live the life of expansiveness and luxury and feeling like a billionaire. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the form of money, because it comes from that feeling of being a billionaire. So when I started to reclaim my life, and when I began to say, no one is coming to save me, because that's really the truth. We as women, particularly, we have been deluded into this idea that Prince Charming is coming to save us, or any other version of fairy tales that are out there. No one is coming to save you. You, as Julia Roberts says in Pretty Woman, when she's talking to Richard Gere, and he says, what happens when he saves the princess? And she turns around to him and says, she saves him right back. Because we are all here holding each other's hands, going home. Where is home? That place of nothingness that we all come from, the ethers of nothingness from whence we came. There's all kinds of great stories and shows on television that talk about Earth. And Earth is 4.3 billion 4.3 billion years old. Not the millions, the billions. And we get so fixated on this moment in time, as if this moment, which it is the now moment, it is a creative moment, but the fear that's being created in this moment, even looking back 2,000 years, is not enough time to get a really clear idea of how huge this universe is that we live in, but more importantly, how tiny we are as individuals and as a planet, to begin to look at how can I rise up, not only myself, but everything around me. And when you rise something up, it isn't about bullying. It isn't about resistance. It isn't about protesting, frankly. It's about what can I do to love and support those who are around me today in this moment. And this book is a love letter to that realization. It's a roadmap back to the truth of who we all are: powerful, abundant, and wildly capable of transformation. Because if there's something in your life that you don't want, rather than focus on that, because the more you focus on whatever it is you don't want, the more that expands. The universal law is what you focus on expands. So are you focusing on the resistance and the fear and what you don't have? Or are you embracing and being grateful for all of what we do have? If you think about how we really are not very grateful about so much abundance that we have in our lives, especially in the Western Hemisphere, it's very fascinating. I just heard, actually, it was this morning, a clip of Governor Gavin Newsom of California talking about how horrible it is that we have put into effect a trade war with China, if you will, and how he's so upset that his children's toys that are under the Christmas tree are all made in China. And oh my goodness, how will we ever live through not having cheap plastic come into our lives? You know, part of the issue that I have with abundance in general, it's always wonderful to create abundance. It's perfectly fabulous to be prosperous and to have a tremendous amount of wealth. But it's what you do with that wealth, to me, that makes it clear about who you are as a human. Do you just want wealth so you can have the latest and greatest toy, or the latest and greatest car, or status, or I'm better than my neighbor? Or do you want wealth so that you can transform your life and the lives of those around you? I know that I want it to have nonprofits, to share with others, to show how incredibly simple and easy it is to allow all of that abundance to come into your life without shame, without guilt. But to say that our life revolves around consumerism and stuff, that's where I get a little bit not so happy. Because the fact is there's nothing wrong with being a billionaire. There's something wrong with how you treat the power that it gives you. So Easter is such a great spiritual invitation, not just as a holiday, but a resurrection as a spiritual practice. Easter reminds us that resurrection isn't just an event from 2,000 years ago. It's a daily invitation. It's the call to rise above our smallness, to lay to rest the parts of us that no longer serve us. And that's what the essence of this book is about, is to begin to recognize that there are so many beliefs, so many ideas, so many stories that you have running around in this mind of yours, but then now have downloaded into your body, that then go out and project that idea of victimhood. It doesn't serve us any longer. And it's so important to begin to step into the alignment of our true nature. We get to resurrect our joy, our health, and our purpose. To begin to renew and rebirth is what spring allows us. Spring doesn't ask permission to bloom. Have you ever noticed that? It just comes. It comes after the winter. And neither should you ask permission to bloom. Nature shows us that rebirth is natural. And that's why I talk about your inner billionaire being your nature. Your nature is to be abundant. Your nature is to be joyful. Your nature is to be confident. Your nature is to connect with this beautiful world that we live in. What in us What in your life is ready to be shed, composted, if you will, so that something new can grow? This is the essence of radical responsibility, is constantly looking at what no longer serves me. How can I be more of the authentic self of who I came on this planet to be? And how can I be the best version of that has ever experienced being on this planet? If you awaken to your spiritual consciousness, the entire beingness of your life transmutes. So think about this spiritual consciousness, this season of spring, of Easter. It's inviting us to awaken, to remember who we are, beyond the roles and the titles and the wounds, and beyond pointing our fingers at someone who is, we believe, not like us, who doesn't think like us. The truth is, we are all one. If you do any research scientifically about how Earth became Earth, we're made out of stardust. We are made out of stardust. Our entire planet is. It's crystalline. It's made out of stars, as are you. So the idea of having a role and a title and succumbing to your emotional wounds is just a way to forget who you truly are. You're a star. You're a beautiful expression of the one, and we are all one with each other. So that when we begin to see that, even if we are a unique expression individually, we are all connected as this oneness. So, how can you point your fingers at somebody else on this planet and say, you are bad, you are wrong, I hate you, you are, and you fill in these horrible names and labels? That is not being radically responsible, because if you think about it, when you're pointing a finger, how many fingers are pointing back at you? There's a great phrase that they used to use in 12-step programs, and it is, you spot it, you got it. And the thing is that what we don't realize is that what we see in others that we do not like is just the shadow self of who we are. It's a part of us that we do not love. The good news is if you spot it, you got it, also works in that reverse of when you see beauty and you see awesomeness and you see potentiality. That also is because you have that within you. So, what is the role and title that you use for yourself? That you are a beautiful expression of the one, of the divine goodness, of the love, of the connection. This is what Easter calls us to do, to make an energetic shift from asleep to awake, from asleep to awake, because we are asleep when we think that we are different, from victim to visionary. Empathy. Begin to, as Stephen Covey said in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, first seek to understand, then to be understood. We are out there so often expecting somebody to understand us, when the reality is, if we begin to attempt to understand how other people see what they see in the world, it opens up a dialogue so that we are no longer victims to each other, but we are visionaries holding one another up. And it's time to triumph over our limitations. Because when we are limited in our thinking, when we believe that there is something wrong, we then say that the higher energy, this consciousness that we live in, this oneness that we live in, is not the truth. And that is the truth. That is the absolute truth. The resurrection story reminds us that death is not the end. In case you haven't noticed, every single one of us that has made its appearance on this planet will make an exit stage right. So, what are you going to do to uplift the planet while you're here? And here's a bit of information is it's not about having a solar panel or driving an electric car. It's about supporting the energy and the lives and the minds of those around you. And when we are constantly cutting those down, we are doing nothing more than exactly what happened to the Christ Jesus as they put him on the cross. We are crucifying our own species on a daily basis. But here's the thing. Death is not the end. So whether you crucify somebody with your words or with your behaviors or with your attitudes, whether you have a failed business or a diagnosis of cancer or a broken heart, radical responsibility means choosing to believe in the possibility of your own rising. What is possible for you? Not what is not possible for others. What is possible for you? What do you choose? What are you for? Because when you're for something and against nothing, you have your focus of where it is that you are going, what you choose to believe, how you want to show up in the world. How do you want to support this planet without imposing your will on somebody else? What is it that you can do to live up to your highest potential? Hope and joy is so important to really begin to see and understand that love is the essence of who we truly are. I ask you today, if you were to ask every single moment when you make a decision to do anything from here on out, what would love do? What would love do? Because without love, you cannot have hope and joy. Without love, you cannot truly embody the essence of being alive on this planet. When you live in fear, when you live in that low vibration energy, you create more of it. And the thing about what's cool from science today is that they now show that your electromagnetic energy, every part of you, your thoughts, your actions, your emotions contribute to the whole. So, what are you contributing? What are you radically responsible for contributing to this world? Easter is just a way for us to remember, to come back to that joy and that love. Radical joy, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstances, but on choice. Because in the book, I share with you that the entire world right now appears to be addicted to despair. And hope is a revolution. Hope is a way for you to begin to say, I choose good. I choose love. I choose being supportive of my fellow man. Sometimes there was a bracelet back in the day. What would Jesus do? Jesus would come here and go, Whoa, what is happening with y'all? Because the fact of the matter is there are great phrases or parables in the Bible, but there is a common thread that runs through all religions. And that is that you are to love somebody else, your neighbor, as yourself, because they are yourself. You are your neighbor. Your neighbor is you. You're looking in a mirror every time you look at them. But when we forget that, we become separate. We become separate from the oneness that this idea of Easter has reminded us. So choosing hope is a revolution. What does radical responsibility even look like when you have hope? What does it look like in your real life? It means tuning in to your body and treating it as sacred, because every thought we have is downloaded into our body. Our bodies are these little magnetic beings walking around the world, sending out signals and letting us see what those signals are from within. It means no longer blaming the economy for your finances, and instead ask, what do I choose to believe about money? What do I choose to believe about love? What do I choose to believe about hope and change and kindness and connection and communication? You are at choice every moment of every day about the narrative that you are living. And all of our narratives, unless we are conscious, we've inherited them. We've learned them from other people, and then we've adopted them as our own. And now it's time to rewrite those narratives in your own voice. Because radical responsibility is a choice to stop outsourcing your power. Stop giving away your power. It's not about shame. And it's certainly not about blame. Because when we blame someone else, we are a victim. We adopt a victim mentality, and that is not freedom. You cannot be a victim and be free. So when you are pointing fingers at other people and blaming them for how you feel, that is a victim mentality, and that is not freedom. It's time to recognize that you and only you hold the pen to write your next chapter. And that is what the message of rising again from the Easter story is about. It's about you rising up, writing your next chapter, your next moment, your next belief. Because as the collective rises, as we become connected together and remember that we are all one, it then reflects in the race consciousness. And when I say race, I'm not talking about racial interaction. I'm talking about the race, the human race. Our race consciousness is being uplifted, and yet there are some energies that are pulling it down. And so now it's time to talk about your personal resurrection, because your personal resurrection matters to the collective, to the race itself. When one woman rises in her truth, it ripples across the cosmos. It ripples across consciousness. It ripples across the field and the oneness. When one man reclaims his heart, it heals generations. Because we are not separate, my loves. We are not separate from the world. We are one with it, and we are shaping it with every thought, every belief, and every choice. So, what thoughts are you thinking today? What beliefs do you have constantly running over and over in your mind? What choices are you making that are the exact choices that you made the day before expecting a different result today. That's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. We live in a world of laws and principles. And the fact is that when we don't listen to those things, when we decide that we're going to behave exactly the way that we have for our entirety of our life, expecting that somehow or another my life is going to be different today. I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be a better mom. I'm going to be a better father. I'm going to be a better friend. I'm going to be a better employee. But you're not willing to change anything and take radical responsibility for yourself. That's insanity. This is how we build the next evolution of humanity, not by waiting for someone to save us. You are your own hero. You are your own hero. And if you decide you want to become the light, you become the light that you've been waiting for. You are your own hero. It is so, so important today to recognize more than ever that you are your own author. You are your own producer. And you can edit this story at any point, at any time, by taking radical responsibility for every thought, feeling, and behavior and choice. So I'm going to leave you with these questions. What part of you is ready to rise? What part of you is ready to say yes to the highest version of who you are? What part of you is ready to say of these thoughts and all of these ideas that I've been living up until this point in my life are not mine? They were planted there. There's someone else's voice. And I know that the truth of who I am is this loving, giving, receiving, circulatory, magnificent being. What part of you is ready to rise today and say yes to the truth of who you are? Where have you been waiting to be rescued instead of resurrecting yourself? Where have you been waiting to be rescued instead of resurrecting yourself? There is no rescuing going on. We are the rescuer. We are the hero. We are the one that makes a difference in our own life. It's time now to say yes to resurrecting the truth of who you truly are. And what would it look like to live from radical responsibility? What's one thing that you could do today, starting in this very moment, that you know is radically responsible behavior that will change your entire life? One thing. For me, it was recently in the past 6 months to meditate for an hour a day. And then things build upon that. In my life, it's been other things at other times. You don't have to completely change your entire life in this moment, although that will be what has to happen in order for you to live the life that you say you want. But what would it look like today for you to live from radical responsibility? Put it in the comments. And if this episode stirred something in you, I invite you to take the next step. Pick up a copy of my book, Your Inner Billionaire. Journal on the prompts that are in the book, and share this podcast with someone who's ready to rise, that you know is ready to rise. And most importantly, know this: you were made for this experience on this planet at this time. You were made for resurrection, for renewal, for joy. Because if we're not growing, just like nature, we're dying. Look at nature today. Spend this time looking at the flowers and the trees and how they have seasons and they die off and they grow again, and then they replant in their soil all the fertilization for the newness. We are here for renewal. We are here for joy. And no matter how many times you fall, the power to rise is always within you.
It's always within you. So I want to just say today, happy Easter, my love. May this be your season of rising. And until next time, keep choosing you because you are so needed, so desired, so essential, so integral to the entire planet. It's not through your votes or through your money, it's through your energy and your essence. So, who will you choose? Choose you. And as you choose you, you rise up the entire planet. Have an amazing Easter, celebrate spring, and know that life is always in your favor.